The Artemis. Launched in 2232, it was a generational ship of 5,000 souls in cryostasis pushing towards GJ667cc, with Janus, an AI core, at the helm. It was humanity's first expedition to the stars. Shortly after passing from our solar system into unknown space, we lost contact. So much had changed since that day. Jump points, first contacts, towering achievements and tragedy in almost equal measure. Despite the hundreds of expeditions, studies and simulations conducted over the centuries, no one ever found anything. Many came to assume that it crashed, flew into a star or dropped into a jump point. The Artemis slipped into legend. Until now. Tonya stared at a piece of history. Here, surrounded by lava, was the holy grail of explorers across the galaxy. A piece of it, anyway. Her mind was barely able to keep up with the torrent of thoughts, hopes, and ideas that assaulted her at the second she saw it. She glanced around. Everyone else was just as stunned as she was. Senzin's face twitched like he was resetting himself to comprehend what he was looking at. The sight of the Artemis even seeped through Squig's alcohol-soaked brain. No way, was all he could muster. Gavin Arlington gave everyone a few moments to let it sink in. Finally, he cleared his throat. The CEO obviously had places to be. Now you know why I called you all here. An assistant handed him a mini-glass which he read while he spoke. What we have here is a delicate situation. What's delicate? You have to tell people, Deke Johnson interrupted. All of Arlington's assistants' eyes widened, incensed at the notion that this dreg would dare interrupt their boss. No, Mr. Johnson, that is precisely what I'm not going to do, Arlington replied, hardly missing a step. Should any of you disagree with that sentiment, allow me to remind you that based on the agreements you all signed, if you breathe a word of this to anyone without my express authorization, you, your family, and your friends will be eviscerated legally, professionally, financially, socially. He glanced to his lawyer. Physically? The lawyer nodded. Physically, Arlington continued. Telling the UEE would shut this world down and eviscerate your mining operation, Tonya chimed in. Arlington glanced over and smiled. The utter lack of emotion behind the simple human gesture chilled her. There's no sense in notifying the authorities or the scientific community until we know what we have found. That's why you're here. I want the crash site of the Artemis found. My facilities, mining scanners and personnel will be at your disposal. Whoever finds the rest will share in the credit for the discovery, as well as a handsome compensation package. Everyone looked at each other, sizing up their competition. Arlington waited expectantly. You can start now, he finally said. Tonya scrambled onto the beacon too. She raced around the hold of the Freelancer, grabbing excavation tools, scanners, vid captures, her mini glass of books. She stopped for a second to catch her breath. Every fibre of her being was on fire, charged with the possibility of being the one to unlock the fate of the Artemis. It was all so unbelievable. She gave herself a moment to bask in the thrill of it. She ran back to the dig site. When she got there, Tonya realised that she was not the only one energised by the prospective discovery. Senzin had already deputised the mining crews into excavating the Artemis fragment. They gently chipped away the black lava rock, trying to see how much more of the ancient metal lay buried. Deke Johnson's cutlass swooped overhead, kicking up a storm of loose rock. The bottom was lit up from its scanners surveying the surrounding landscape. On a nearby hillside, Squig drank from his flask while swinging a homemade scanner. Arthur Morrow walked past carrying surveying gear and deep rock scanners. He barely acknowledged them or the artefact. Not interested in analysing this, Art? Tonya unpacked her camera and tools. Arthur looked at her and snorted. The money ain't that. The money's out there somewhere. He motioned to the sea of solidified lava that surrounded them and moved on. Some people lack vision, Senzin said to her with a smirk. Tonya snapped a series of pictures of the Artemis fragment and stitched them together into a composite. Once the image was reconciled, she applied it to a database of Artemis imagery, trying to isolate which part of the ship it could have come from. Tonya realised Senzin was standing behind her. That's a good idea. He grinned mischievously and went back to directing workers. Someone needs to tell Deke to stop scanning so close. The gravel could damage the metal. Her mini-glass hummed. Based on the stenciling and faded markings, There was a good chance that what they were looking at was part of the starboard thruster panelling. It was helpful, but not conclusive. The panel could have come off during a crash or in space. Over the course of the next few hours, Tonya, Senzin, and the workers successfully extracted the piece and placed it carefully on the ground. Tonya slowly circled the metal and captured it from every angle. In its entirety, the piece was roughly 2 meters by 4. The edges had been melted away by the lava bath. Fortunately, its thermal shielding managed to protect this part of it long enough for the lava to cool. When she was done, she sat down and looked at it. Pretty unbelievable, right? Senzin slumped down in the gravel beside her. He sipped from some water. I can't stop looking at it, she replied. After all this time, we might actually know. Yeah, he nodded and held the water out to her. Tonya eyed the bottle hesitantly. Calm down, Tonya. We're competing, but that doesn't mean we can't be civil. Tonya took the water and drank. She hadn't realised how thirsty she'd been and ended up finishing the bottle. You're welcome, Senzin said with a chuckle. Sorry. Don't worry, I got some more coming through. Senzin glanced around. One of Arlington's assistants hurried out of the corporate headquarters with more bottles. You already have his assistants fetching you stuff. I work fast, Senzin replied with a shrug. He took the bottles. Cheers, thanks. The assistant hustled off. Senzin turned to Tonya. Shall we? They poured over every inch of the Artemis metal, front and back. Tonya cleaned it the best she could, then searched for any kind of clue to indicate what happened. There was nothing. The edges were melted to the point where it was impossible to determine whether the panel was ripped off or not. She ran tests on microsamples off the metal. Another dead end. She sat back and tried to disconnect from the puzzle. Hoping a few moments away would give her some perspective, she looked at Deke still scanning the landscape from his ship. Squig was slumped on the hillside trying to fix his scanner. He pulled an entire scanning module off and tossed it down the slope. Then, inspiration hit her. Quelling her impulse to run, she attempted a casual stroll back to the artifact. She rescanned the edges of the panel. Senzin approached. Got something? I don't know. Maybe. Tonya ran her fingers along the edge of the metal. But it's not like I'll tell you if I do. Fair enough. He stood over her and watched. Tonya grabbed the metal and tested the weight. She could flip it on her own, but not with control or without damaging it. Give me a hand, she said to the workers. They didn't move, only looked at each other, then Senzin. Yeah, I've already made arrangements with them, so they're only really helping me out. Senzin shrugged innocently. Tonya glared at him, then flipped it herself. The metal face slammed down on its other side. It hurt her spiritually to do it, but she wasn't going to give Senzin an inch. The interior side of the plate was much like the exterior. Metal. Melted. There was a patch less warped than the rest. Tonya examined every millimetre with her zoom optics. Finally, she found an edge. A clean edge. That was it. She had to suppress the swell of elation inside her to not tip her hand. She looked around, but Senzin had disappeared. 5 minutes later, Tonya was outside Arlington's temporary office. The assistant ushered her inside. Tonya again resisted the urge to sprint those final steps. Arlington was at his desk, sifting through data feeds of company assets. You found something? He asked, without looking up. I don't think this is a crash site, Mr. Arlington. Arlington finally gave her his attention. Tonya brought up photos and zoomed in on the patch until she focused on the clean edge. See that? That edge wasn't ripped or bent. It was cut. Tonya brought up additional data screens of her findings. My analysis says it was made with a precision laser that, while clumsy compared to today's standards, is period accurate to the type of tech included on the Artemis. Go on. I think it's set down here to make repairs, Tonya said, that thrill bubbling up again. It's still out there. Quite a discovery indeed, Mr. Turov, Arlington said to a side door. Tonya looked around, confused. Senzin stepped out. I told you we found something big. Senzin stepped up beside Tonya. We, she stammered. Her confusion quickly turned to fiery indignation. Mr. Arlington, I don't know what he told. Miss Oriel, please. Arlington waved his hand. You've sold me. Tonya glared at Senzin, suddenly wishing for pyrokinetic powers. The offer still stands, Arlington said as he turned his back to his feeds. Now, You two go find it.
NordVPN is amazing and you should buy it. It's so useful, it's easier to tell you what it can't do. NordVPN can't do your taxes. Nord, how much do I owe for VAT? NordVPN can't help you buy more spaceships. Nord, add a terrapin to my shopping cart. NordVPN can't cook for you. No, my cabbages! And NordVPN can't be your girlfriend. Can't or won't NordVPN, if that is your real name. NordVPN.com/BoredGamer will help you connect to the internet more safely, securely, and anonymously, with greater access to the content you want. But can I teach it to love? Links below for the best NordVPN deals around. Every month we have a ship giveaway, and for September, that's for the Drake Corsair, that fantastic exploration ship. Not only will you be able to explore the verse with it, but the ship is perfectly competent at a huge range of gameplay, and is a fantastic mission-running ship. You can use it for cargo, you can put some vehicles in there. It's reasonably good in a fight, one of the true multi-role, multi-crew ships. To be in for a chance of winning one of those, just comment on any of my videos made during the month. More details down below. Also down below are links to be able to support the channel more. There's the join button, making you one of my elite channel members. You'll get occasional exclusive content. There's also YouTube badges and emotes to show your support. There's also Patreon for those of you that prefer that. We try to mirror the rewards on there as well. But just people liking, subscribing, and sharing these videos goes a long way. A heartfelt thank you to everyone that watched the video. I hope you have a great September, and I'll see you in the verse.